Welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm going to talk about the stages of youth female athlete physical development. Before I get into it, if you have not subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button below so that you can get updated anytime I post a new video. Let's do this. The stages of youth female athlete physical development. So I want you to think about these like the school system. So when we are young, we first learn the ABCs, then we learn how to form sentences, then we learn more complex grammar. Then when we get into high school, we start to write more in-depth essays. And then when we get into college and beyond, we start to write dissertations. Well, if we make it that far. So just like academics, physical development is all about taking the young athlete through stages based on their physical and mental maturity status. So in elementary school, kids are super plastic, meaning they need a broad range of motor skills and to learn a variety of movement in order for them to build their muscles. And most of their muscular gains are going to be more neural. So for them to soak in a variety of movement is so important. So they should be climbing, crawling, hanging, pulling, tugging, wrestling, grappling, and learning all of these movement patterns so that they have just a nice foundation to eventually express more sports specific and advanced performance programs. Think of these movement skills as laying the foundation for building a home. You have to have a nice, strong, and sturdy base in order for the details of the house to be held up. You don't put the furniture and do all the interior design and the decorations without laying that foundation first. So the elementary schoolers, they really just need the building blocks because that's where their bodies and minds are at in their development. I'm going to list all of the motor skills right here so you can take a look at them. These have been compiled as the basic movement skills that every kid needs to master before they move on to more advanced training and more sport-specific work. These are some of my favorite researchers in the game of youth athletic development who have compiled just such an amazing list of movement skills for athletes to master before they move on to advanced speed and strength programs and to really nail down sport-specific movement. So as an example, if we take shooting in soccer, we have to learn how to balance first in order to have a strong shot and have power behind it. So balance is step number one. We have to learn how to balance on our plant foot and stabilize our core. What better way to learn that by doing balance beam or hopping across the pond or leaping or skipping or jumping off trees? I mean, these are all things that kids should be doing as much as possible when they're young, because later in life, they're going to be able to execute sport-specific and more advanced movements with ease. Another one is sprinting fast. In order to express an insane amount of speed, kids need to have coordination. Rhythm is another aspect of speed. They need to have good posture, good balance, and they get all of these by doing all of these skills at a young age. So I hope it breaks down the movement skills for you, and athletes can never go wrong with doing as much variety as possible. The best athletes have such a diverse palette of movement literacy, and the athletes that tend to do the best when I meet them for the first time in high school for their evaluations are athletes who are multi-sport, who sampled a lot of different activities, and who had a very active childhood and they didn't specialize too early. Now, this isn't to say specializers are doomed. Of course, there are some outliers, but I'm going to link a ton of research here. Be sure to check that out in the caption below. But specialization doesn't mean an athlete's going to be more successful, and it actually does increase the risk of overuse injury because there's just so many repetitive movement. So be sure to check those out and let me know what you think. Keep in mind for this age group that they are are craving fun. They don't need serious programs. They don't need drill sergeant drills. They don't need really super structured training right now. I mean, they have over a decade left in their sports journey to get to those things. So right now is all about fun for the young ones. And if they are working with a performance coach, those sessions should be task-oriented games, competitions, and they should be smiling and just bursting with laughter the entire session. Now let's move on to the middle schoolers. This is when athletes are starting to go through rapid periods in growth. So they might be getting taller and shooting up like a weed, as parents would say. They might be even feeling a little bit more awkward. And that's because during this time, they're also gaining some degree of fat mass. And for the female athlete, they're gaining that in the chest and in the hip area. So, of course, their center of mass is going to be a little bit off. We want to proceed with caution here and make sure we're not berating the female athlete for what she's going through, but instead giving her really solid training. During this time, it is totally okay for girls to start learning strength training, but they don't need to load right off the bat. Get them used to learning the strength movements with body weight, learning how to stabilize their core, control their center of mass, and really have balance. So the focus of this stage of development is technique, technique, technique. And then once they can prove that they got the technique down with all the strength movements, then they can start to load with free weights and start to really build a solid strength base for when they enter high school. Now, during this stage, I don't really like to take too many objective measurements just because there's so many changes going on. And as an example, you might have a 12-year-old female athlete who is super fast at the beginning of the year, and then she just hits her growth spurt, and her speed times actually slow down a little bit because she gained that extra fat mass, which is totally normal. And we don't have to really make it our focus. We just have to stick with the training program. It's just a storm to weather, and it's something we don't need to get on her about, but just really continue to give her the tools and empower her with good strength training. So the next and final stage in development is the high school years and beyond. And these are going to be more focused with objective measurements, getting broad jumps, vertical jump measurements, also acceleration, and then max velocity times. And we do this because when athletes are in high school, that's when they have started to grow into their adult stature more, and we have a better idea of where they are at in their physical performance. Female athletes also have hormones coming into play during this time with an increase in testosterone. So that's also going to lead in some performance improvements and also more muscular gain. So a lot of the gains that come from a performance program during the high school years are going to be more muscular gains, whereas the younger age groups is more neural. Another focus in the high school age group is really focusing on power training and making sure that they can move load as fast as possible and become explosive on the field. Make sure you take a look at where your athlete is in their stage of development and to find a trainer, a performance program that matches that. I always tell parents we never would put a fifth grader in calculus, and we never would put a senior in high school in basic ABCs. We have to do the same with our physical development because our athletes are at such different stages of their journey in their bodies and minds. Are you having your athlete's age and maturity level match their training? Please comment below and let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you're doing with your athlete and how old they are. I would love to hear how everyone's doing with their training, and I will see you guys next time.